Good morning, everyone, and welcome to what promises to be an exciting, engaging, and informative time together. We've come together this morning for a community conversation on lung cancer to share hope and in our stories. And let me just thank all of you, and especially our panelists, for being a part of this conversation this morning. And we want to move right into our program so that we can maximize our time together. And so let me begin by opening with a word of prayer, and then we'll follow with some comments, and we'll move right into the heart of why we are here. Father God, we thank you for bringing us together today. We thank you for this wonderful collaboration with all of the partners represented here. And we thank you for all of those persons who are currently on the call, and we are praying that you will send others our way. And so we ask now your blessing upon this moment together today. Bless every speaker with a special anointing to speak into the hearts and the lives of those who will be watching. And we pray for receptive minds and hearts to the information that is being provided. And God, we pray that what happens here today will have a lasting impact on the lives of our community. Bless us now. In Jesus' name, amen. And again, thank you for coming. And let me just give you some highlights for today. And first of all, to talk about why we are here. And we are here today to equip and empower people through information as it relates to lung cancer. And the reason we are here is because when we look at the data, we see that lung cancer has a major impact on our community, especially when you compare it to other communities. And we believe that we can mitigate the impact of lung cancer on our community by empowering our people to better manage their lives. And there's some data, for example, that suggests that African Americans are 18% less likely to be diagnosed early, 23% less likely to receive surgical treatment, 9% more likely to not receive any treatment, and 21% less likely to survive 5 years compared to white America. And there's some other data, but rather than sharing it, I want to share a quick story. I was with my father, who was also a minister at a Baptist convention. And while we were there, he got sick. Took him to the emergency room in Rome, Georgia. And after about an hour, the emergency room physician comes out and says to me, "How long has your father had lung cancer?" And I say, "I didn't know he had lung cancer." He says, "Yes, it's been there for a minute. In fact, he has 6 months to live." And so as soon as I got with my father, "Did you know that you had lung cancer?" "No." "Have you been to the doctor? Did they screen you? Did they test you?" "No." "Have you had any symptoms?" And he began to talk about some issues, but just kind of dismissed it, shared it with his doctor. Doctor dismissed it. And so the short of the story is he was never diagnosed. And those around him, because we didn't know the signs, we did not see that there was an issue as it related to lung cancer. And 6 months to the day that the doctor told me he would die, he died. And all I could think about is, had we known, we could have perhaps saved his life and at least extended his life. And so today is very personal for me. So I hope that all of you listening will give attention to what we are saying, but more than anything, take action after you hear about what we're going to present today. The overview of the program today, I'm going to do some introductions of our partners, and then you are going to hear from some of the best and the brightest minds around the state. And we are going to be seeking to do a few things today in terms of our learning objectives. We're going to help you understand the cause of lung cancer, to recognize the risk factors of lung cancer, to understand why health disparities exist in lung cancer detection and screening, to understand why screening is beneficial to detecting lung cancer early, and to understand what the process for screening looks like from the patient perspective. And again, from my own story, I didn't know, no one in my family understood any of what I just talked about. And so it's critical that we are empowered with this information. And that's what we're going to do today. And then let me say that I am so, so thankful, because the reason I am on this call today, the reason Mount Zion gets to participate, is because we received a call from Atlanta, Ms. Quinn, who's on the call, and we were asked to partner with HEAL. And it's an acronym that stands for Health, Education, Advocacy, and Learning. And it's a faith-based organization out of Atlanta, and they partner with faith-based organizations across the state to come along beside us to help us educate our communities in the area of healthcare. And so I am so grateful for their partnership with us, and we're looking for a long-term partnership, not just to address lung cancer, but other issues in our community. And so with that, let me share with you our other partners. Not only do we have the HEAL Collaborative, but we also are blessed to have Amgen as a part of this collaborative. We also have the Morehouse School of Medicine, and of course, our own Phoebe Putnam Memorial Hospital as a part of that. And with that, I want to welcome Amgen's representative, Lisa Giroyu. And thank you again, Lisa, for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pastor Simmons. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for making time to be here today. As Pastor Simmons said, my name is Lisa Giroyu, and I'm the Director of Global Advocacy Relations for thoracic and GI cancers at Amgen. Amgen is one of the world's leading biotechnology companies, and our mission is to serve patients by transforming the promise of science and technology into therapies that have the power to restore health or save lives. We're committed to advancing policies and practices in support of achieving health equity so that everyone has the opportunity to be as healthy as possible. It's estimated that over 25,000 Black Americans will be diagnosed with lung cancer this year, with Black men and women being more likely to be diagnosed at a younger age than white Americans. And for Black men, lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death. And for Black women, it is the second leading cause of cancer death. At Amgen, we find this to be unacceptable. We're working to change this narrative through important initiatives like this one brought to you by HEAL. We're committed to working with organizations like HEAL to meet patients and communities where they are, to help educate and empower individuals to become informed advocates for themselves and their loved ones. I'd like to thank HEAL and Mount Zion for working together to create such a phenomenal program, and all of you for being here today. Amgen is humbled and honored to support this important work. Thank you.
Ursula is going to lead us now through our comment time, and then we'll do some questions and answers.
Good morning, and thank you, Pastor Simmons. I am Ursula Mathis, one of the directors of oncology here at Phoebe Putnam Memorial Hospital, and also a proud member of Mount Zion Baptist Church. Thank you, Pastor Simmons and HEAL, for providing us this opportunity and this platform as we continue to reach the world through Christ. We're elated to bring this wealth of information to the community today. We have an awesome panel of medical experts. So without delay, our topic today is, what is lung cancer? We're going to start off with Dr. Eric Flanaugh, who is the Chief and Director of Pulmonary and Critical Care Interventional Pulmonary Medicine at Grady Health Systems. Dr. Flanaugh.
Thank you. We have the slides. Got you. Okay. Just kind of giving a general overview. Myself, I always tend to have a lot more slides than I need, but I just want to make a few key points so we can have more for discussion. So lung cancer and abnormal growth of cells and tissues in the lungs. And there is a big healthcare disparity with respect to lung cancer. Just something to keep in mind. I'm just going to dart through these because we want to spend more time for a discussion. But keep in mind, when we talk about disparities, we want to keep in mind that part of it's health, and there's environmental and biological factors with people affected. And then there's the health care, and there's the specifically lung cancer. We got to look at early detection and some system factors that help factor into outcomes. Okay, so environmental and health and biology factors. Just a few key points. African Americans, they do have the highest lung cancer mortality rates, despite similar smoking rates as whites. This was already alluded to, but if we take African Americans, and this is from 2019 data, and we look at the new cases estimated each year, you can see that the prostate in men outweighs lung cancer almost by 3 times. And then in women, breast outweighs lung cancer almost about 3 times. But if you look at the estimated deaths, the deaths are greatly slated towards lung cancer. So although other cancers are more prominent, more prevalent in African Americans, lung cancer is the biggest killer. Okay, and this despite having similar smoking rates, you can the lung cancer incidence in African Americans are much higher. Here's the smoking prevalence for African Americans. This is men, this is women, compared to whites, and you can see it's almost equal here. And even Native Americans have a higher smoking prevalence. But if you look at the incidence rates here, you can see the rates are significantly higher per 100,000 for lung cancer rates among African Americans. So even though you have similar smoking rates here, the rate of lung cancer is a lot higher. A lot of factors play a role into that, but a few things do come into how we receive care. One is healthcare, the ability to detect early, and the system factors that play a role in this. And just one thing is that African Americans are less likely to meet lung cancer screening eligibility. Part of this comes from the National Lung Cancer Screening Trial. African Americans were only about 4% in that study, although they make up about 12% of the US population. So that means the screening criteria that were developed out of that study didn't have a good representation of African Americans. Okay? And we did a study and we showed that the reality of it was about 14% of African Americans that were diagnosed with lung cancer in our study would not have even qualified for screening. So there was a problem with that. There's new screening criteria out. We can talk about it in discussion a little bit later. We've heard a little bit how African Americans are discussed at a later stage. Just give you a pictorial of this. That if you take localized disease where it's in one spot, you take regional disease where it might be in one spot in a few lymph nodes, which these have a better opportunity for getting remission or even cure versus those that have distant stages, where blue is whites and the red is African Americans. So less likely to have it in one spot where you can have surgery or focused radiation therapy to get you a cure, and you'll hear a little bit about that. Versus regional, still African Americans are less. But if you look here in distant stages, African Americans are more likely to have advanced stage and less likely to be able to achieve cure. And the likelihood of receiving standard and diagnostic staging and treatment options is part of the healthcare component too. As we think about this, and we'll also hear more about this, surgical disparities, and this is looking at patients that are most likely to have cure for lung cancer with surgery. So if we look at white men, Black men, you can see less likely to get curative intent surgery. White women, Black women, it's about the same. So men are at the most risk for having the disparities with healthcare in lung cancer. But we do know, and there are studies that show that when you do get equal care for the specific stage, that this disparity changes. So if we take all patients with lung cancer and we look at their survival over time, you can see that whites had a higher percentage of survival over time than with Blacks. But when we focused on surgery and curative intent surgery, and we provided to those patients that did qualify, that survival curve actually mirrored each other. And so the disparity goes away. So a lot to look at, a lot to discuss and inform you about, but you wanted to keep in mind, African Americans are highest risk for lung cancer disparities. screening was missing a large portion of African Americans. And so new screening criteria has come out. Structured treatment by targeting specific populations, biomarker testing, or making sure they get specific treatment as surgery does improve outcome, and when we can achieve equal care, we can get equal outcomes. So with that, a few more. So looking forward to the discussion as we come through.
Thank you, Dr. Quinn. That was awesome and most informative. We also have with us Dr. Alan Pickens. Dr. Pickens is a director of minimally invasive thoracic surgery and the director of thoracic oncology for Emory Healthcare. We do have a few questions in the chat, and we're going to hold the questions until the end of all the presentations.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. As mentioned, my name is Alan Pickens. I'm a thoracic surgeon at Emory University, and I'd like to share with you a couple of comments about the treatment and prognosis associated with lung cancer. Lung cancer is a devastating disease that is wreaking havoc in all of our communities, Black, white, Latino, throughout the nation. The detection and early treatment of it is imperative in our success in treating this deadly disease. I want to emphasize that a diagnosis of lung cancer is not a death sentence, and that is a common misconception that is particularly distributed within the African American community. Lung cancer treatment has made tremendous strides in the last 10 years, and we have many new therapies that allow us to enhance quality of life and prolong life. Lung cancer treatment is highly dependent upon early detection, so the screening of patients to detect who needs treatment and to properly stage them is very important. I did see a question in the chat concerning who should be screened. The new US Preventative Medicine Task Force suggested that anyone between the age of 50 and 80 and that have a less than 15 year, have a 20 pack year history of smoking and have not quit within the last 15 years should be screened. So those criteria can be defined and found on the websites for the preventative task forces. When we look at treatment is very dependent upon staging. And I did not include any slides on staging because that is something that should be done by a healthcare professional. Please don't take it upon yourselves to try to guess about what stage of cancer or what stage a nodule in your lung may be. That should be done by a professional with experience within treatment of lung cancer. And hopefully your case will be presented at a multidisciplinary tumor board that has multiple experts present that can weigh in on the most appropriate care and treatment for your lung cancer. So please make efforts to get your case reviewed by someone with experience in treating this disease. When we talk about treatment, it can be lumped into two very basic categories: local treatments and systemic treatments. Local treatments are those that address a very early stage tumor that's localized to a specific part of the lung. When we think of local therapies, surgery has been proven time and time again to have the most effective ability to cure and give long-term survival from early stage lung cancer. If all of the cancer cells can be entirely removed from the body, you have the best chance of not having it come back. When we talk about surgery, people have been very fearful in the past about the degree of debilitation, the pain, and all these things associated with thoracic surgery. That has been overcome tremendously by our ability to do these operations with minimally invasive approaches. We use robotic technology, thoracoscopic technology, all to do the same types of operations and remove these cancers with minimal incisions that are very small and a lot less painful than the traditional thoracotomy that was used in the past. The survival is similar and sometimes better in these minimally invasive approaches. When the surgery is not an option and cannot be done for certain patients that have other comorbidities, we have other local treatments such as radiation therapy. Stereotactic body radiation therapy is a technique in which you can give high doses of localized radiation to a localized nodule and get pretty good results in terms of killing the cancer cells and giving a good long-term survival. When cancer cells of the lung have spread out to other places, though, meaning they've left the lung tissue and gone to lymph nodes or bone or the liver or other places, we need something that will treat the entire body to help reduce the chances of it coming back. Simply removing the lung or radiating a specific part of the lung doesn't treat the cells that are outside of the lung. This is where intravenous drugs can be given to kill the cancer cells. The downside of the intravenous systemic chemotherapies is that those also harm normal cells. So this is why you see some patients that have perhaps lost their hair or they've lost a lot of weight and they've had some GI issues. All of those rapidly turning over cells also are affected by the intravenous cytotoxic agents. We've progressed in the number of side effects associated with some of those chemotherapies, but we've also added in a lot of other systemic treatments that also help reduce the recurrence of lung cancer and give much longer survival. We have targeted therapies. Targeted therapies are those directed at markers on the surface of cancer cells, and they kill those cancer cells and don't affect the normal body cells. Now, this is very dependent upon those cancer cells having specific markers. So we have to remind our physicians to always check for these targets or markers on the surface of the cancer cells. It is not just enough to biopsy or take it out and not do molecular testing in this current era of lung cancer treatment. In addition to those targeted therapies, we also have newer drugs that empower your own immune system to kill lung cancer cells. These are the various immunotherapies that you hear people talk about in the treatment of lung cancer. Those are being added to patients with stage 4 disease and giving much better survival and allowing people to live with their disease for a longer period of time. When we think about survival of lung cancer, it is very dependent upon diagnosing at an early stage. When we find patients that have existed with their disease and allowed it to spread from the lung to other parts of the body, our success in getting them to live 5 years or more is much lower. It's less than 4% when diagnosed in stage 4. When we're able to detect these cancers and find them in an earlier stage, i.e. when they're smaller, localized to the lung, and can hopefully be totally removed, our success and our survival rates are much greater. We're much greater than 50, nearly 80% in many cases of early stage 1 lung cancer survival. So the final statement would be early detection saves lives. If we can find these cancers earlier, find them when they're localized, and apply the therapies that we have in our modern armamentarium for lung cancer treatment, we are far more successful in saving lives. With that, I'll end my discussion and we'll move on to the next topics, and we'll answer questions as needed.
Thank you, Dr. Pickens. We now hear from Dr. Michael Satchel, who's an internal medicine physician at Medical Associates of Albany. He also holds numerous local directorships of Pruitt Health and several different nursing homes and facilities. He's also a member of Mount Zion and an advocate for community health and equity in health here in our community. Dr. Satchel.
Thank you, Ursula. Good morning, everybody. As a primary care doctor, I'm a family practice physician who's been in practice for the last 25 years. My job is to try to address these issues at the early stages. So I want to address lung cancer in a preventive stage. I want to address it in the early stages. Like Dr. Pickens says, the holy grail of lung cancer is to try to catch it early. If we can catch it in the early stages, and it could be more effectively treated. So in my office, my emphasis is on smoking. While not all lung cancers are caused by cigarette smoking or cigarette smoking exposure, most are greater than 80% are caused by cigarette smoking. And so I address this with my patients. All my patients smoke. Each time they come to visit, we go over reasons why they're still smoking, and what we've done in the past to try to quit smoking. So whenever I can get somebody to quit smoking, I greatly reduce their risk of developing lung cancer. And it doesn't matter if they've been smoking for a long time. Once they quit, they get a, if you will, a new lease on life. So it's important to address this in a preventive state, trying to get them to quit smoking. There are other things that do cause lung cancer: environmental exposures and work exposures. So I'll also discuss with them what kind of work they do, what are they exposed to at work, are they taking the proper precautions to avoid any exposure. So those are the preventive things. Now the early detection part comes with early screening. And again, as the doctors mentioned earlier, that early detection is the holy grail. If we can catch them early, then we can. And so, what are the tools in our tool belt for this? Getting a chest X-ray, evaluate early symptoms. If somebody comes in with a cough that has been going on, unexplained cough, then we want to go ahead and get an early chest X-ray to see if we pick up anything. But the most useful tool that we have in our tool belt is a low dose CT scan, and that low dose CT scan is recommended for patients who are older than 50, smoking for more than 20 years. This guideline recently changed, as one of the doctors mentioned earlier. It used to be over 55 to 80, and those who had been smoking 30 years. It's reduced to try to catch more people earlier. And so now, if you're between the ages of 50 to 80, haven't quit within the last 15 years, and have a 20 or more year history of smoking, then you should be screened using the low CT scanning. So once we can get people screened earlier, get this caught earlier, then I can go ahead and get these people recommended for the treatment and hopefully cure their lung cancer. But again, the key is going to be trying to prevent, and if we can't prevent, then catch it early and send them for treatment as early as possible. I encourage all my patients again to quit smoking, and anybody who's listening to this, if you are a smoker, please get with a primary care doctor about ways that they can help you to quit smoking. So I'm going to be happy to answer questions as we move into the question and answer portion of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Satchel. Okay, with some of the questions that are in the chat room, I'll begin to ask some of those questions. One question is, does secondhand smoke increase the risk for everyone in the household? And does the long-term effect of secondhand smoke, especially on children in the household, cause long-term risk or possibility of lung cancer?
I can take that one.
Okay.
Okay. So yes, so it's always been hard to quantitate exactly how much smoking or secondhand smoke does impact the risk of lung cancer for those receiving the secondhand. And a part of that is because you can't really quantify, packs per day we can with the actual smoker. But what we do know, and studies have shown in the United States, is that people who are exposed to secondhand smoke have a 20 to 30% increased risk of developing lung cancer. And across the United States, each year there's about 7,300 to 7,500 new diagnosis of lung cancer in patients exposed to secondhand smoke that weren't primary smokers. So it does impact those that are exposed. And the longer the period of time is, the more likely they are to develop lung cancer. But we also have to think about the other diseases that it impacts too, because people who are exposed to secondhand smoke, especially in children, they're very young children, more likely to suffer from the sudden infancy death syndrome, or have middle ear disease or chronic respiratory problems like asthma or reactive airway disease. In adults, the classic tobacco-related disease processes become prevalent. That's COPD and emphysema, coronary artery disease, strokes, and in women, reproductive and low birth weights. So yes, there is an impact of secondhand smoke. It does relate or does influence the likelihood of developing cancers to those that are exposed. Quantitating it has been a little bit hard.
Thank you, Dr. Fanal. While you have the mic, I would like to also ask you, although we know that the next series is going to go more into the advancements of treatment, can you tell us a little bit to our audience about how personalized medicine and biomarker testing has an effect with lung cancer treatment and availability of it?
Sure, and let me go a little bit more into what exactly biomarker testing is for those that aren't clear. I know Dr. Pickens spoke a little bit about that, and he's an expert in the field as well. What you're looking at is, the DNA and the genetics of all tissue types and tumors are prevalent. And when lung cancer develops, it develops because there's a defect, a misperformance of the DNA, and it causes certain proteins and other markers on the cells to be expressed. And now we can track some of those by looking at how they excrete some of these proteins or some of these DNA markers. And if we can recognize them, we can get therapies which help target some of them and help improve the outcomes. And that's been because not all of the tumors not all lung cancer tumors express the same markers in the same fashion. We can target specific aspects of these markers, specific one of them, and pick targeted therapies that focus specifically on what's being expressed to help improve the outcomes and get a better opportunity for cure for the lung cancer. So what this means is as we move along is one of the standards has been to test when people are diagnosed, we get the tissue samples to test for these biomarkers to see if there's other therapies outside of the standard surgeries or radiations or chemotherapy that might actually add some opportunity to achieve a cure and resolve the lung cancer or have it go into remission.
Thank you. One of the other questions in the chat is, why do non-smokers develop lung cancer?
I think if anybody from the panel knew the answers to that question, we'd be receiving some Nobel Prizes. So I don't think that question has an answer. We don't know why people that don't smoke also get lung cancer. There are changes in the cellular level that cause patients to get lung or develop a lung cancer. And the science is growing, and we're rapidly understanding molecular and DNA on a much higher level now. And hopefully we'll have an answer to that in the future. But right now, to my knowledge, I do not know exactly why people that don't smoke also get lung cancer. We can think about that in many ways. We can also say that there are people that that smoke 2 packs a day, and they're 100 years old almost and have never developed a lung cancer. So there are also, the other side of the coin. There are people that smoke that don't get lung cancer.
And I'll discuss this in a little bit, but I'll be talking about radon exposure, which tends to, it's the leading cause of lung cancer, or the second leading cause of lung cancer behind smoking. So I'll talk a little bit about what that exposure looks like, how to test for radon, and how to fix it and mitigate that exposure. Because, like the question was asked, lung cancer is not a smoker's disease. It is a disease that affects people, and we need to think of it that way.
And I'd like to also sort of add to the concept of smoking. We should not be shaming people for smoking. We should be educating them and helping them to overcome something that puts them at a higher risk. We commonly encounter patients with a lung cancer diagnosis, and the first thing people ask, did you smoke? As if they had contributed to their own demise. That's not what we are trying to present. We want to empower people to see it as Dr. Cooper just mentioned. This is a systemic disease that affects people. It's not just a smoking disease.
Yes, thank you. One last question. Are there signs and symptoms of lung cancer? Are there signs that an individual may be having that differentiates itself from a cold or sinuses or reflux or shoulder pain, and they're not in that age group for testing?
I'll start off with that question. So in my practice, anytime somebody comes in with an unexplained cough, there's no recent cold, there's nothing else that allergies or reflux that may produce that cough, but it's a cough that lingers that doesn't go away after a few weeks or a few months. That's somebody that I would consider as possibly having lung cancer. Get an X-ray. If they are a smoker, then I certainly would go ahead and consider a CT scan. Also, if somebody comes in and they're losing weight, of course, everybody wants to lose weight, but if they're losing weight without trying, then that's also a kind of a danger sign that there may be so that somebody else will look at extensively for possible.
Thank you, Dr. Satchel. I see one interesting question also in the comments, and I'm going to go ahead and ask that question. It said, "Do you see any correlation to these new vapors and scented candles and incense to lung cancer?"
Right. This has actually been something in the a lot of discussions about this in the pulmonary world. Currently, based on the studies, there has not been a direct link between vaping and the development of lung cancer. Although this is still new and it's a lot of vaping is occurring in the younger populations. But what we do know is that a lot of the same chemicals that are produced from tobacco smoke are also produced from the vaping solutions. So we do like in some of those high energy vaping cigarettes, they especially the solutions that have higher concentrations of formaldehyde, we know that gets vaporized and that causes some lung damage. I think we're still early in the game with vaping. I think as we go along, as populations age, that we'll start to see whether or not there's a direct link or relationship though. But what we do know is those that vape, even if they start at a younger age, are more likely either to continue smoking or to start smoking actual cigarettes.
Can I add one more comment about the vaping? The problem with the vaping is it's not regulated. The content of the vape substances are so variable that many people don't even know what they're actually inhaling. So it's not as simple as a tobacco product. It is all the other chemicals that are added to the vaping substances. So please, please be cautious about the vaping concept.
Thank you for that information. We're going to transition on to our next panel of guests, which is our Phoebe Healthcare team here in the Cancer Center. We have what we call here at Phoebe a lung watch program, which is a lung screening program. And we have a panelist of young ladies here with me today that specialize in our lung cancer, lung prevention, really cancer as a whole, prevention and screening and outreach and social services. So I do have with me Deborah Knight, who's our lung watch navigator. We have Teresa Land, who's a social worker, along with Shadonda Harris, who's also one of our social workers here in the Cancer Center, Monique Wilson, who's our data coordinator for our Lung Watch program, and also a cancer survivor and an advocate and a member of a Young Survivors group. We have Kisa Mansfield, who's our manager of so many things, clinical research, genetics, outreach, wellness, prevention, and Janetta Williford, who is our outreach navigator. So we're going to start with you, Deborah. Tell us about the Lung Watch program, how our community can have access to the Lung Watch, what are the screening criteria, and just how do we get in for a screening mammogram? Screening CAT scan.
Okay.
So our lung screening program is called Lung Watch, and you get in, you have your healthcare provider send us an order. We do go by the CMS guidelines, which are ages 50 to 77, and you have to have at least 20 pack years. And we've heard this earlier from the physicians. Pack years are calculated by the number of packs per day you smoke times the years you smoke. So if you smoke a pack and a half a day for 36 years, you have 54 pack years. So it's real easy to calculate. And if you feel that you need you qualify, then you need to talk to your healthcare provider. And all of the providers in our area are very familiar and with Lung Watch, and they will send us an order and we'll get you scheduled. Lung cancer screens are encouraged because most lung cancers are, if not screened, are detected at a later age, which we have heard from our physicians. And once symptoms develop, lung cancer is usually too advanced for curative treatment. Screening increases chances of being diagnosed at a much earlier curative stage, which is what screening is designed to do. So screening is painless, it's quick. You come in, you eat, drink your coffee, have your breakfast. There's no needles, and it takes about 10 minutes. So it's a real easy test to have. So talk to your provider and they'll send us an order. So with screening, we know with a lot of our cancer screenings and healthcare screenings, they're repetitive. How often should an individual be screened for lung cancer?
So if your lung cancer screen is normal, it's recommended you have it done every year. Just like women in their mammograms, it needs to be done on a yearly basis. They compare each one to the one you had before. Smokers or previous smokers will often have changes in their lungs from the years of smoking. So they compare each one to the one done the year before. Okay. So every year you have one done. Most lung cancers from screens are not found on that very first screen. So it's important to have one done year after year. We send out reminders that it's time to contact your provider to have your order sent in, so you are followed yearly.
Okay, so this question has come up. If I am a non-smoker, I don't necessarily meet screening criteria, how do I get screened? If I grew up with parents that smoked and I've been in the car and the windows are rolled up and they're smoking in the car, I have a spouse that smokes, so I've been exposed to secondhand smoke for as many pack years as these people have smoked. How do I get screened? How can I get into the system to be screened?
Unfortunately, if you're a non-smoker, you can't, but if you are having problems, if you're having symptoms that we've talked about, then you need to talk to your healthcare provider. That you can have a CT scan done, just not a low dose screening scan. And your provider, if they feel it's necessary, can order a chest CT to look at your lungs and see if anything's going on there.
So to be clear, I can have the test done. It's just not labeled a screening. If I speak with my primary care physician, it's the same technique, same modality. It's just considered a diagnostic test, not a screening test.
CT, yes.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to have a case scenario here. In the event that I had my screening done, we saw some abnormal findings and it says I need future workups. Teresa Land, who's one of our social workers, tell me, what is the role of the social worker? And after I've been screening and the results dictate I need additional tests, what's my next steps? What do I do now? I'm uninsured. I've been offered these free screenings. I've gotten in and I've gotten the screening. So how do I get treatment now because I don't have insurance?
Okay, so once we get to that point, thank you for that question. We have a program, or the state has a program called Cancer State Aid.
Mm-hmm.
And if the patient comes into our clinic, they're self-pay, have no insurance, the doctors will refer them to the social worker. Mm-hmm. And we would do what we call a diagnostic evaluation. Mm-hmm. That's where Cancer State Aid will pay for additional testing whatever is needed to confirm that this is cancer.
Okay.
Cancer state aid will cover those costs.
Okay, that is awesome. And now let's go to the next step. I've had the additional tests. I've gotten it covered from the cancer state aid, so I don't have that burden of resources and bills. But now I've been diagnosed with this, dreadful diagnosis. And what are my next steps? Shadonna, what resources now, because they've paid for the testing, but now how do I seek treatment? How am I gonna get assistance, and how I go on to my next step for treatment?
Well, Ursula, thank you. But during that initial consultation, you come in, you see our oncologist, and you meet a social worker, someone like myself. Social workers, what we do, we basically conduct what we call a needs assessment. And that's to identify potential practical, physical, emotional, sometimes spiritual needs that's related to that cancer diagnosis. And based on those needs, what we actually do at that point is that we make referrals to the various resources that are available to cancer patients. And Teresa will speak more about some of those resources.
Yes. So here at Phoebe, in our oncology department, we have a variety of resources which are patient specific. That's why it's so important that we do the needs assessment, but they are specific to the patients. But if they have to have chemotherapy or radiation therapy, we provide help with the gas. We provide lounging for patients that have to travel 25-mile radius or more at what we call our lighthouse. We assist with grants to help provide financial assistance, especially if there's been a loss in income as a result of coming to treatment. For uninsured patients, we provide assistance with medication. We have patient advocates and financial counselors that assist with outstanding medical bills. So we do have a variety. Much of our gas assistance is provided through Horizons Community Solutions, American Cancer Society, and our Phoebe Foundation.
So a patient who is uninsured, who has a significant muscle history, are they provided these services through Phoebe Financial Assistance as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's good information to know, and thank you. Monique, who's here also, as I said, with young survivors, we all know, and we've heard the experts say that smoking puts us at a higher risk for all diseases, and especially lung cancer. Tell us how we can combat smoking at an early age and what the community needs to know about smoking.
Okay, first thing, according to the CDC guidelines, and my personal history and my family, where I find it, where the findings is we're seeing more and more of our young people, starting at the age of 13, which is middle-aged youth, that are engaging in smoking and tobacco use. And that's a big increase even now, as we see our young people even going back to school, and they finding this as a comfort zone to them, or they finding it during social and economic environments, and they think it's okay, which is not okay. And what we could do in the community is really share more with our youth people, getting more involved in them, finding other educational and extracurricular activities, so they don't fall into that category, which is that 1.3% of going to tobacco use.
Okay, thank you for that information. Kisa, tell me more about what is Phoebe as an organization, our cancer center, doing specifically to help fight the disparities seen in the communities, the disparities seen with screening and prevention, access, and availability.
Thank you for the question. And I'm going to be very transparent in answering this question. The Phoebe Cancer Center realized that we're not doing a very good job with getting out in the community and having boots on the ground and have really, really robust community outreach. The Phoebe Cancer Center and the Phoebe Health System, we have a large footprint in Southwest Georgia. And we're very fortunate that the health system approved a full-time oncology community outreach navigator. The three pillars of this position are education, screening, and prevention. With this position, we want to highlight what we're seeing in the Cancer Center so that we can relay those, the things that are coming through our doors and relay those types of scenarios in the community environments, whether it's getting in front of churches, different organizations. We want to actually let our community know what we're actually seeing here. We're very realistic about living in Southwest Georgia and very much aware of the social and economic disparities that are in our community, in our patient population. We acknowledge those barriers, and we want to decrease the number of patients that are walking through our doors with late-stage disease. We've had a lot of support from our community partners, specifically Department of Public Health, and a tremendous amount of support from the American Cancer Society. We've had several partnership awards through ACS for lung, colorectal, and breast cancer screening and awareness. Lastly, we've had an awesome partnership with Dr. Brian Rivers with the Morehouse School of Medicine. Through a community partnership award, the Phoebe Cancer Center has been working with about 10 African-American churches in our area. The project is called Project Elevation. The churches have nominated champions to be trained to have open, honest, and raw conversations around prostate cancer screenings and with men in their life circle. I'm going to let Janetta, our community outreach navigator, talk a little bit more about our partnerships and Project Elevation.
Thank you for that. So we partner with several faith-based organizations on our local project to focus on healthcare within the Black community. We have assisted this project with 5 very successful events, and while we found some cancer and some abnormal results, we have connected many of our community members with local primary care physicians of their choice. Also, Phoebe hosts 2 annual health fairs with the cancer-specific theme. That's going to be the women's health fair and the men's health fair. We typically have over 400 community members at each fair. What I love about these events is that we offer free health screenings, like blood pressure checks, diabetics checks, and cholesterol tests. We also offer a plethora of health education and different kind of vaccines. At these events, we also have some kind of activity or show for our participants.
Okay, thank you, Janetta, and thank you all for that overview of our program and our outreach services. To bring this back into lung cancer screening and awareness, I do have a question that was proposed as, what can I do if my insurance denies my screening or if I get billed from the hospital? Currently, most insurances are covering preventive care and screenings if it's ordered properly and under proper guidelines. Sometimes you have to work with your healthcare providers. I can give you a contact number to contact our coordinator, because sometimes it's just in the wording and the diagnosis. But if you, in the event that you get a bill, please contact the Cancer Center, and then we can try to work that out for you. But we are offering at this time free lung cancer screenings to the community. We're partnering with Auburn Area Primary, some of the local physician groups, and all of the PPZ physicians groups to offer these free screenings. All you need is an order for your physician, and you have to meet the CMS guidelines to qualify. Again, if you do not meet the CMS guidelines, you have to have that discussion with your physician so that it can be ordered as a diagnostic test. Okay. I can also provide a number for anyone that has any questions regarding the screenings. That number is 229-312-7199. That's 229-312-7199. Feel free to call, ask any type of questions that you have. It's a referral source as well. We can get you in contact with your primary care physician if you feel that you or a family member need these screening tests done. I don't have any other questions in the chat. Wait, let me check and be sure of that. I do have a question. It says, what impact does your diet have on cancer prevention? What impact does your diet have on cancer prevention? I'll answer that. None of my panelists seem like they were. We all know that diet and exercise is essential for all disease control. It's essential for your overall health. So your diet here in our oncology center, we do have a licensed nutritionist and dietitian, and that's part of your consult when you come in for your initial visit. But we do encourage healthy eating, healthy lifestyles. We have a wellness center that we also held healthy eating classes and booklets, but it's essential for disease control, for a healthy lifestyle and healthy living. Diet and exercise is essential for all disease stages. I have another question. Do the patients have to come from partnering organizations, or is it open to the entire community? This is open into the entire community. The free screenings are open to all of the Southwest Georgia, to our entire service area. The referral source does not have to come to Phoebe. The opportunity is just there when you call. If your primary physician is outside the Phoebe network, then we work with that primary care physician. But these screenings and this opportunity is open to all of the community, to the community as a whole.
Ursula, I will say that the diagnostic testing through the Cancer State Aid program is specific to a facility, so that the participating facilities have to accept that patient into their organization.
Right, that's for the screening test itself.
Right, exactly.
Which I think we are participating facility. I don't
We
know
are
about some of the outreach area,
Right.
outpatient diagnostic
Phoebe is the
centers.
only one in the Southwest Georgia area outside of Thomasville, I think.
Okay. But these free screenings are not through the Cancer State Aid. The free
Right.
screenings are just available to anyone, in participating or non-participating.
Right.
I have another question in the chat. It said, if you are not located in the state of Georgia, what is the best resource for finding out about screening options in your state? I can't answer that question. Maybe someone on the panelist can, someone from Hill or one of the other representatives.
I don't have the best resource. I haven't encountered that. I wonder if we could look, maybe what I can do is I can research that and I can get that back to you, and we can pass that on to those that are interested.
Our navigator, Deborah, said that she may have an answer to that question.
They would need to go to the GO2 Foundation website and look for a screening center of excellence. And I would not have a lung screen anywhere besides a screening center of excellence. They have met all the criteria to make sure the screening center is doing what they're supposed to do, following guidelines. They have radiologists that are reading and know what they're doing, and they participate in multidisciplinary teams, and so I would make sure they go to a screening center of excellence.
And no matter what state you're in, Ursula, I would recommend that anybody who's interested in screening consult with their primary care provider. They're gonna know the most about what, who's available in that state or in that part of the country. So yeah, certainly check with your primary care provider. And also, if I could, I just wanted to go back to what you were saying about diet, vitamins. And while it's important to, increase the fruits and vegetables in your diet and also take supplemental vitamins, it's important to remember that you want to check again with your primary care doctor, because you can overdo it with certain vitamins. You want to make sure that you check with your primary care provider before you go out. The drugs doing a bunch of vitamins.
Thank you, Dr. Satchel. If there are no more questions for this segment of the program, we're going to turn it over to Jamie Bowles.
Good Oh, yeah.
That is correct. Actually, before we go to Daryl Cooper, and I do apologize, I got ahead of myself. I have a question for Daryl, actually. Daryl,
You
as
do?
Keisha stated, I do. As Keisha stated, that we are very transparent and we are aware of what we're doing with outreach and where we're lacking in outreach. So how does Phoebe bridge this gap to build trust, access to quality care, and partnerships within the community?
Wow, what a question. And yes, Keisha was very honest, but I don't think, I think the honesty came from her own humility, because she and you and the Cancer Center are doing so much. I mean, to develop that trust. I'm sitting back hearing all of what we're hearing from the very beginning, hearing Pastor
Just
Simmons
forgot
come
about
on.
other people.
Hello? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Ursula's going somewhere else. I didn't know where she was going. But in listening from the very beginning, and Pastor Simmons and his story, I never knew that story, Pastor, about you and your father. But just to hear that and to know that you have experienced that helps me really understand where your passion comes from when it comes to these kinds of issues. So, you know, when you start off with that kind of honesty, and it comes from a pastor, and a pastor is such a dynamic leader of a church, you know, you begin to feel the authenticity of what's in his spirit, and it matches with the reality of what we're going through in our communities. And then you hear how complicated healthcare is and how complicated disease factors are. You know, we talked about diagnosis, we talked about treatment, we talked about navigation, a lot of very complicated stuff that really needs to be sort of broken down into a health literacy bottle for people to really engage and wanna understand it. But to us listening, and to us who participate in it, we truly understand it. And I'm listening, I'm hearing Brother Pickens and Dr. Satchel and Flanagan talk, and I'm saying I really want to bring these people to communities, because you when you hear their breakdown and their explanation and the passion, then as a health advocate, you just want to bottle this. But Dr. Pickens said something about non-smokers getting cancers. He was very honest. He said, I don't know. When it comes to trust, sometimes you really don't know. Trust is such a theoretical kind of concept that, you know, how do you really build trust? Trust is something that happens through a shared relationship of honesty and caring and of love. And of course, to me, the church is one of the first places that's fertile ground for that, because there's faith and there's values within the church of giving and caring and sharing. But my experience in working with the churches over the past 50 years of me doing this kind of work is that yes, the church is an excellent place. It's a gathering place. And sometimes pastors know that tends to get exploited, because everybody wants to come to the church. The politicians want to come to the church. The social activists want to come to the church. And sometimes the pastor has to protect the church from an onslaught of activities that come in. But when it comes to health and faith, there's such a natural connection. In health, we're trying to save lives. In church, they're trying to save souls. So it kind of really does blend up in there together. And through that loving and caring, the principles of spirituality, what can happen is trust just sort of emerges. It sort of naturally morphs itself. And it happens within our own spirits and our own guidance. And I know I'm not trying to preach a sermon, but the pastor knows what I'm talking about. It's that will and that honesty, it's that humanity within us that other people can identify with, and it just kind of connects. And it allows us to take the world and all of its complications and deviations and divisions. It allows us to come together almost the way that we do when trauma hits our life. You know, you're looking at Ukraine right now, or any place where trauma happens, you know, there may be divisions, there may be different theories and outlooks, but when something happens in your life that brings you to a single point of focus, then you begin to share as a community. And that happens a lot in the church. I want to protect the church, and I know the church is important to us, but what's most important, as we heard there earlier, is the pastor's commitment. I've done a lot of work in churches. You can come to a church, for example, and do a smoking cessation presentation, or ask people to sign up for a non-smoking program, and they may hear that message from the pastor or from some handouts. But if Jesus Christ himself is not standing in the back of the church, when it's time to sign up, they'll walk right on out of the church. But if the pastor says it's important, and if the pastor commits, then it happens. And so Pastor Simmons' commitment to me is so important to this conversation and to our success. But trust is something that is very important. The trusted voices that we always point to is a combination of all of this honesty and all of this acceptance of facts and leaning on science. And from all of that is where our will to survive and our desire and our compassion brings out an element of trust, and people can see that. You can't buy trust. You can try to buy it. You can try to buy trust, but trust just is felt from your shared example.
Thank you, Daryl. And just to tie that all in, as an organization and as a cancer center, we're just committed to integrity. We offer hope, but we're not selling dreams. And we are going to be true to ourselves and true to our word. And when we go out into the community, we're telling you what we can do and what we're going to do. And we're coming through, and we're going to follow through with those things that we've said that we're going to do. And that's how we as a cancer center are committing to building that trust and building those relationships and standing on integrity. And when we say that we offer 100 screenings, we have 100 screenings. When we say that we're going to do this in the churches or do this in the communities, we are prepared to offer those services and do that to the community. So I think that as we bridge the gap here in the Cancer Submitted, we're committed to operating in integrity. So now we're going to move on to Derek Cooper, who's going to share some information with us. And after that, we're going to Gregory Bolden.
Awesome. My name's Derek, and I am the radon educator with the University of Georgia radon program. We're part of University of Georgia Extension. If you guys haven't heard of Extension before, it is a branch of UGA that is devoted to bringing research-based scientific information to the public to help benefit the public. And so as part of that, we have the radon program. If you haven't heard of radon, radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer behind smoking, and it's an environmental exposure. Radon is a radioactive gas that is odorless, colorless, and tasteless, and it's elevated in about 1 in 15 homes in the United States. And it's something that we don't often discuss because it often takes a backseat to smoking and other exposures. And while smoking is a more important exposure when it comes to lung cancer, we should also address radon in our homes. And the way you address radon is by conducting a radon test. Like I had discussed, radon is odorless, colorless, and tasteless. And so really the only way to detect it is to test for it. You'll see this image on the screen here. That is a radon test kit. Fortunately, as part of this program, so these test kits are normally $15 a piece, about when ordered online or bought at a Home Depot or Lowe's or other hardware store. But for the attendees of the program, you should either be in the chat box seeing a link, or as a follow-up to this program, you'll receive a link to claim a free radon test kit from UGA. So we're able to give out 100 of these from this class today. So I encourage you guys, as soon as you see the link, to go register for it to claim your test kit. You hang this test kit in your home for 1 to 15 or for 3 to 7 days. And it's already self-addressed and stamped to go to the lab, and they'll give you your results to tell you if you have an elevated level of radon in the home. So it's easy to test for, and it's easy to fix. And it's one way to reduce your risk for getting lung cancer, and just to make sure you leave a healthy life at home. For perspective, about 800 people are diagnosed with lung cancer in Georgia, due in part to their exposure to radon gas every year. So it's just one important exposure that we need to address. You'll see our website for the program here down at the bottom. That's radon.uga.edu. So if you have any questions about the test kits, about radon itself, how it gets into our home, you can explore our website. My contact information is on there, and I'm the radon educator for the state. So if you have questions, you reach out to me and I'll help you get the answers you need. If you do find a high level of radon, we'll follow up with you to let you know the resources you need to hire someone to come and fix the radon issue in your home. Because if you find it, it can always be fixed, and your home can be a healthy and safe place to live. So thanks for your time, and thank you everyone for putting this together. This is a great program. I'm learning a lot myself.
Thank you, Derek. That's awesome information, and we've put that information in the chat, it appears. Gregory Bolden.
Good morning, or it's afternoon now. Good afternoon. I'm Greg Bolden. I'm the Community Initiatives Program Manager for the Center for Black Health and Equity. And there we are. And I appreciate the conversation. And I just wanted to highlight a few of the things that we've said. I think it was Dr. Pickens who said that when a smoker comes in, if they have lung cancer, even if they don't have lung cancer, we should not vilify the smoker. There's a reason why they've been accosted by the tobacco industry over the years. And I put up this screen here because each year we do an event called No Menthol Sunday. Why do we do that? In the 1950s, about 5% of African Americans that smoked mentholated cigarettes. Fast forward to the 2020s, now 85 to 90% of African Americans that smoke menthol cigarettes. Now, why is that important? Menthol has a cooling effect. It allows the smoker to inhale deeper, to hold the tobacco product smoke in their bodies, affecting their lungs, but other areas of their bodies such as COPD. And what we're doing this year, this is our 7th year of doing this. So this year we're fighting back. We're going to finish the fight against menthol. Some people are out there saying, well, why are you taking away the black person's cigarettes? It's not our cigarettes. We have been targeted by the tobacco industry. We've been used. Matter of fact, even in their own documents, they said that they reserve the right for smoke for the black, the young, the black, the young, the stupid, and someone else. But they have targeted us. They've used our politicians. They've used our social clubs. They've used our community leaders, and sometimes even our faith leaders to actually push their product onto our community. And so we're fighting back to reclaim our sense of pride. 45,000 African Americans die each year from tobacco-related diseases, which includes lung cancer. So we're fighting back, and May 15th is our No Menthol Sunday, which was started by a group of pastors 7 years ago. and we're continuing, but it has become a faith, overall faith awareness intervention to where all faiths are included in our outreach, but we're also targeting youth, we're targeting retailers, we're targeting the international community. And many of you know about last year when the FDA announced that they were going to begin the process of rule making to eliminate menthol and other flavors from cigarettes and from little cigars and cigarillos. One other thing that we mentioned earlier today was about vaping. Most people don't know that when the young people, when they have one pod of the vaping tool that they use for vaping, that one pod is equal to an entire pack of cigarettes. So that's 20 cigarettes. So if they're doing it in 1 hour, that's going to affect their lungs, which will actually lead to other areas that, such as COPD. One of the instruments that we do, we're not only doing No Menthol Sunday, but we're encouraging folks to call the quit line. The CDC has a tips from a non-farmer smoker. This is Jerry, who's in Michigan, a 58-year-old methylated cigarette smoker who has COPD. They're using it as one of their advertisements. We're encouraging folks to call their quit line. There's quit lines throughout the country. In every state, there's a quit line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW. But Dr. Satchel had the most pointed question that you can call the quit line, but it's important for you to have conversations with your primary care physician, having them know that what you're doing. Don't try to lie to them. They don't see you every day. They may see you once or twice a year unless something else is going on. So you have to have a conversation with your primary care physician. And if you're needing help with quitting, they can help you. There's the quit line. There's the American Lung Association, Freedom from Smoking. Even here at the center, what we have is Freedom Pathways to Freedom, which is a smoking cessation education campaign. It is not a cessation program, but it will educate you about what you should look for in a cessation program. And I have to, we have facts, materials, fact sheets when we're talking about smoking. But when we're talking about smoking, there are other things that actually have led to lung cancer. It may be your environment that you work in. It may be smoking. It could be genetics. I'll give you a personal story. My mother called me about 4 years ago and called me up and said, Greg, I've been told by the doctor that I have lung cancer. And my initial reaction was not that this is a death. I said, oh, Mom, it said, we've got new treatment options now. We can fix that. Well, and then the next question I asked her says, well, what does your pathology report say? And she said, what? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, Mom, you don't have a pathology report? It's going to tell you where it's located, what the size is, it's a staging. She said, oh, no, I don't have any of that stuff. Long story short, she didn't have lung cancer. She did have lymphoma. And because the next day I was on a flight going to Oklahoma to see about her and had lymphoma. And they had already started her treatment. But I said, Mom, let me come and let me sit down with you. Let me talk to your physician and let's find out what's going on. But push come to shove, it was not that, but we have to be clear about the diagnosis. I think Dr. Pickens said it best. You need to know, you have to have a team working with you. You'd have to know what it is that you're dealing with. But I encourage everyone who can to actually give up smoking. But if you're smoking menthol cigarettes, you're at higher risk of it getting deeper into your lungs. And when you couple that with the nicotine that's in the tobacco, and oftentimes with the mentholated cigarettes, there's a higher concentration of nicotine, which may cause you to become even more addictive. Plus there's ammonia that's in the cigarette smoke that they've laced the tobacco with that helps with the absorption of nicotine in your body. So we've become a target for the tobacco industry. And this says it as well as I can, dear tobacco, we are dying. And it says that we're going to fight back because we're no longer going to be your source of income. And as African Americans, we work tirelessly to ensure that this education process is out there. So you can actually join us with this year for our hashtag is no menthol Sunday 2022, NMS 2022. Or go to our website at the Center for Black Health and Equity and download our toolkit, which was just released yesterday. And we'll have sources up there on our website that can actually help you. And if your church would like to be involved, I encourage you to just contact me and we'll get your church involved. We'll get you registered for the materials that are going to be coming out. But we want to educate our community about the menthol, but also overall tobacco use. And if you know someone who uses tobacco, we encourage you to quit, have them to quit. Or if you're using tobacco, we encourage you to quit, but go to a cessation program, help out with the cessation program, contact our office, and we will work with you because it's time for us to fight back against the tobacco industry and actually tell them no more. We're not dying anymore because you want to keep your big houses, your planes, and your big cars. We're no longer going to do that. And with the FDA's ruling coming up soon, but we're also going to work with our local communities to eliminate menthol sales in our community. Again, I need to stress the tobacco user is not the enemy. We should never make them our enemy. Those who are coming against us are the tobacco industries. And so we want you to work with us. We want you to work with us and actually help us overcome that, and we'll move forward. So I'll answer any questions that may come up in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you for that wealth of information. I think we have next on our agenda now, our patient panel, which is going to be moderated by Jamie Bowles.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having me today. My name is Jamie Bowles, and I am the owner of WJMS Media. I'm also a stage 4 lung cancer patient, and so I'm happy to be here with the HEAL Collaborative and with everybody involved here. And it's funny, they asked me to tell my story and to come and share with you guys, a little bit of my journey. And I've done this a lot of times. I've, talked on many platforms. I've, discussed this in many different, avenues. And I sort of have a way that I tell my story. And listening to all the things that everybody's talked about today, I'm changing it a little bit. There's some things that I feel like are very important that I need to mention, being a lung cancer patient and listening to this information, and being somebody that doesn't fit that narrative that everybody is talking about. So as I said, I have stage 4 lung cancer. I was diagnosed in December of 2018. And at the time, what started as, I guess, somebody asked the question in the chat, what are the symptoms of lung cancer? I started with a cough. It was just a cough that came out of nowhere. It literally just like a cough and a wheeze together. And it didn't really throw me off until it lingered for a little while. And then I was like, okay, something's going on. And so I decided that I was going to go to my doctor and say, hey, can you, do something? Something's going on. I have this cough and this wheeze, and it's very strange. And so I went there and they gave me a breathing test, and that was it, honestly. And I came back inconclusive for asthma and allergies. And he's like, well, it's inconclusive for both, but I'm going to give you this inhaler, try that out for 2 weeks and come back to us and let us know how you feel. So of course I tried out the inhaler every time I felt short of breath and having the wheeze, and it didn't really help. And I came back to him and I told him just that. I said, that wasn't really helpful at all. And so he gave me a cough suppressant and again, sent me on my way. Never asked me for a chest x-ray, never sent me for a screening, never did anything, never investigated any deeper than that. And I didn't feel like I was really getting any support from him as a physician in general. And so I just really kind of, honestly, unfortunately, decided I was just going to deal with it, because that's kind of the status quo. When you're a Black person dealing with a doctor, unfortunately, they don't really see you. And so that had been my story. And I was like, yeah, you know what, this is going to go away. I'll just give it some more time. Fast forward a few months, I'm in a stable, committed relationship. I am 30 years old now. My metabolism has slowed all the way to a halt, and I started gaining weight. And I said, all right, I need to sort of get into the gym and start doing some things. And I got into kickboxing, and I started to really love kickboxing. But the good thing about kickboxing was it gave me an outlet. The bad thing about kickboxing was it distracted me. And I started to think that all the additional symptoms I started developing after getting into kickboxing were because of that. I started getting shortness of breath. I ended up getting a little bit of back pain, all of which I just attributed to high intensity cardio and punching and stuff like that. I was thinking, hey, my back is sore because I'm working out heavy and I'm not used to it. And so I ended up just kind of thinking and treating those symptoms without thinking much more of it, until finally I got the kick in my butt that I needed to get a second opinion. And I went to NYU Langone and I got a second opinion there. First thing the doctor asked me was, have you had a chest x-ray? And I said, nope, not at all. And so he sent me upstairs. I got a chest x-ray. When I came back downstairs, all the blood had drained from his face. It was like he had seen a ghost. And he's like, are you feeling okay? And I said, I mean, I'm tired, but I'm always tired. And he said, your entire left chest is filled with fluid, and I need to admit you to the hospital right now because we don't know what's going on. And, fast forward a little bit more, I'm going through my story rather quickly, but it's because I have a point that I need to get to. So he admitted me to the hospital, and it was there. I'd never spent a night in the hospital originally. No asthma, no allergies, no history of cancer in my family, not a smoker. So I really just had no business being in the hospital, unfortunately. And I stayed there for 6 days. They drained 2.5 liters of fluid out of my chest. And a week and a half later from there, I got a diagnosis of lung cancer. I wasn't staged until about a week and a half later by accident. I won't go into that, but that was, something that was an additional uppercut to my diagnosis. But it's stage 4 ALK positive lung cancer. And when I was in the hospital, they, did the biomarker testing, and they, did a biopsy and all that good stuff. And I, tested for the ALK gene mutation, which was, I guess, a blessing in disguise. I remember my doctor telling me, if there was ever a cancer to have, this is the one to have. And I remember thinking to myself, that's not what you say to somebody who just got diagnosed with cancer. That's not the sentence that we want to hear. But, in hindsight now and looking at my prognosis and what's going on, I'm on a targeted chemotherapy, that the doctor spoke about earlier. I'm on alectinib right now, which is great. And it's been my first TKI from the beginning. And it literally it's given me my life back. If you would look at me right now, you wouldn't even know that I have lung cancer. And I can thank science and research and faith and friends and family for all of that. But I will say that there was a time when, I wasn't telling anybody anyway. So you wouldn't know by looking at me that I had lung cancer, but I wasn't speaking about it either. There was definitely a stigma behind it. I don't want to say I was ashamed. I wasn't embarrassed. It's just something I was keeping close to my chest. And I said this in the chat earlier because it's something that has happened from the beginning. Every time I tell somebody that I have lung cancer, they're like, oh, but you don't smoke. And I have to stop myself from, getting angry and just say, no, but I have lungs. And that is literally the only, criteria that you need to get lung cancer. And so to go along with what, Dr. Pickens talked about earlier and some of what everybody else had mentioned earlier, I was never going to be a candidate for screening. I would have never, to this day, sitting in front of you right now, to this day would not have been a candidate for screening. There was no way they were going to catch this for me. There's a large population of us, about 10 to 20% of non-smokers who get diagnosed with lung cancer every single year that don't want to say we get ignored, but we get ignored, and you've listened to the Phoebe group and everybody else talk about how we don't fit the CMS guidelines to get screened. But I'd like to say my life is important. And I'd like to say that there's a lot of non-smokers out there dealing with late stage cancer that got missed because they weren't screened, who also feel the same way as me. And so while I understand that smoker and smoking can increase your possibility of getting cancer, there's a large portion of us in this country and around the world who never smoked and deserve the same fighting chance that everybody else has. So while the screening being adjusted for smokers is great, we need to keep that same energy for non-smokers, because people like myself, I often wonder if I had been screened a year or two earlier, they could have caught this at stage 1 and I could be cured. I could be sitting here talking as somebody who might have had late stage cancer had I not got screening. And unfortunately, that's not the case. I'm sitting here as a late stage cancer person talking to you about the situation. And so I say all that to say that even though I have late stage cancer, like the doctors mentioned earlier in the program today, it's not a death sentence. I am still very much living my life. I am still very much telling my story and sharing with people as much as I can, trying to get rid of the stigma behind lung cancer and the idea that this is a smoker's disease. I am a firm believer that even if you smoke, you don't deserve cancer. And that's when I feel like I want to be a mean person, I sometimes say that to people, you know, when they say, oh, but you don't smoke. And I'm like, would it make you feel better if I said I did? Like, does that mean I deserve it? And they're like, oh, wait, you know, just reflect it back on people sometimes is a way to, a very mean way, but it's a way nonetheless to, you know, let people know that there's more to it than just smoking. Lung cancer doesn't affect only smokers. It affects everybody. It's the #1 cancer killer of men and women. So I am actively communicating with people, telling my story, being an advocate, doing events like this where I can speak about it from first person perspective to share with people and to hopefully create this movement that we need to screen not just smokers, but everybody for lung cancer because it's a people's disease. It affects everybody, not just them. And so I am happy to be here today. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat or anything like that that I need to answer, but I will pass the microphone over to my fellow moderator, Maisha, and she can tell her story and speak as well. So thank you for your time today, and I will answer whatever questions should pop up from here.
All right, good morning, and I am here. Thank you so much, everyone. I thank Hill Collaborative for being here. I thank my fellow panelists. Jamie, your story is moving. I also would to highlight my experience. I was in and out of the session earlier due to an emergency and football games for my son. So I am here again, and I want to share my story. I believe I know a few people who are in this particular session. But professionally, I tell people professionally, I wear 4 or 5 different hats, as we know as women, especially Black women, what we do. I am a health policy director at the David Satcher Health Leadership Institute at Morehouse School of Medicine. So excited to be a part of the family from Morehouse School of Medicine. I also am a community-based researcher focusing on cancer disparities. So I have a 15-year history in terms of research and also a public health practitioner in education. I'm also an assistant professor at Morehouse School of Medicine, and a lecturer at Emory University. All that to say that personally, I am impacted, and I was more so a caregiver of, and I say a charger. It was destined to be that because of my background and my profession, for my husband, my late husband, Emmanuel Charles Standifer II, who was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in March of 2020 at the start of the pandemic. So there were a number of factors that I could talk about in terms of screening and diagnosis. My husband succumbed to some of the side effects linked to cancer by a pulmonary embolism in April of 2021. So with that being said, I can talk a little bit about the diagnosis journey, the treatment, and also the caregiving experience. This is in honor of him and giving honor to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So I can talk on all different tenets because my husband was an assistant pastor in Tampa, Florida. And we continued to, as much as we could, meet and fellowship prior to the start of the pandemic. But his symptoms came on, I believe, at least a year and a half before. But I believe as men, sometimes he was able to get annuals, but screening sometimes, we know as I believe there were some indications of individuals talking about this, the lack of screening. Although lung cancer ran in his family, he was not screened. He had various, we call them symptoms, which undiagnosed and unbeknownst to me, not knowing about lung cancer, I focused on reproductive health cancers in women, gynecological health, and prostate cancer, but was unbeknownst to me, again, as I talk about research of lung cancer, especially impacting disparate communities, marginalized communities. So he had a cough the beginning of 2020. And again, looking back, there was cough, there were symptoms of back pain, as well as we thought it was a herniated disc. He had herniated discs. So it was okay, it's back pain. Went to the chiropractor. He had an MRI, was no detection of that. And so when the back pain started to increase, I started to get a little discouraged. He also had a shoulder would give out periodically. again, not noting that we need to really check this out. Went to hospitals in Tampa Bay area, still no screening efforts. So when he finally, we took cough medicine, the cough wouldn't go away, diagnosed at that time during the start of the pandemic, clinics started to not see individuals on particularly face-to-face. So he went online and got a telemedicine consultation, and the telemedicine nurse said, hey, you probably have bronchitis. Let me prescribe you some antibiotics. At that point, the symptoms subsided a bit, but came back. So we finally went in. The precautions at the beginning of COVID-19, of course, everyone was trying to figure everything out with clinical practice. And so he went to urgent care, and we went to urgent care thinking, okay, it's a cough, pain meds. He went in for pain. And when the PA at the urgent care said, oh, let me take an x-ray. Let me see what's actually going on. When she took the x-ray, she came back and she kind of put her hand in my husband's hand, and she said, hey, I think we see something that you need to go to the hospital for right now, immediately. So we thought, okay. So me and my son was with us, and we said, hey, let's go home, let's get ready. We'll go to the doctor. They'll discharge you after you go see the doctor. I could not take my son into the hospital, so my husband had to go into the ER alone and spend overnight in there with all the, start up the precautions for COVID-19, and stayed in there for a week and a half. The next day he said, Maisha, I was told I have pneumonia and I have some fluid, in my lungs. They're going to check it out. When the doctor supposedly checked it out, came back on that later that evening and said, Maisha, they think it might be cancer. And I'm thinking, whoa, what's going on? He said, and he was still in shock. Again, at that time, there were no, visitors allowed. So my husband was told he had stage 4 lung cancer in the hospital by himself with about 6 doctors around him. Stayed in there a week and a half. We went back to the doctor, and they wanted to give him chemotherapy immediately. They said that's the only way, that's the only option. Luckily, I had worked at the Moffitt Cancer Center as a research assistant, came back around and was able to be linked up with an oncologist by her name, Dr. Janelle Gray, who was excellent. And my husband did not want to do chemo. He says, I don't want to do that as a treatment because so many people that I know do not survive. And when Dr. Gray heard that, she says, well, I'm going to do all that I can to treat you in the best way possible. When I saw my husband's shoulders relax, release, did the biomarker testing, is out positive. And so I just thank, God for allowing that year for him to be with us. So I thank you so much. The treatment now is going on to, I'm now speaking on this particular platform in faith-based organizations across the nation, a part of Longevity as well, the cancer organization, and also concentrating on lung cancer pilot test with Morehouse School of Medicine and community-based research. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both for those powerful, impactful stories. We empathize and sympathize with your journeys, and we know that there's so many other stories like that that are out there. For the sake of time, we're going to bypass our question and answer section. We do want to say that if you have some questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will attempt to answer all of your questions offline or on another platform. There is a phase 2 that you are invited to come back to, and that date will be announced. And at that time, we're also going to cover some clinical trials and clinical research and genetics information. We're also going to have some medical experts on the phone and talk about treatment options and various other subjects when it surrounds lung cancer. So Pastor Simmons, if he's going to come back and close us out. Thank you all for participating. We appreciate it, and we're here for you.
All right, thank you, Ursula, and to all of our panelists, we thank you so much. I don't know about you, but I have been blessed tremendously by the information, by the personal stories, And we've got just a short time. We're already a few minutes over, and so we're going to move quicker to close. Early on, Representative Winfred Dukes was not on, but he is on now, and we want him to greet us before we close it out. Representative Dukes, and he is state representative, but he's also my representative. So we thank you for being on.
Thank you, Pastor. And I want to thank you and Ursula and the team for presenting for this presentation. I was initially tasked to just bring greetings, but I am so glad that I became a part of this conversation. You know, one of the things that I saw that is with the disparities of it, the disparity of an African-American and a white man having died from cancer, it really relates to early detection. There is no greater propensity of one to die over the other if we are able to detect the disease early. So I want to applaud you for what you all are doing to try to see if we can get that out to our community. Because in our area of the state, as you know, healthcare is a serious challenge. And one of the greater things is that, you know, you are what you eat, and your health is your wealth. And it is essential that in order for us to be able to control our diseases, we are going to have to be able to control that which we eat with regular diet and exercise. I have a story of my own where my doctor, I'm glad to see him, Dr. Satchel, where he did not diagnose me as having aphasia. Dr. Satchel, this week, my aphasia was acting up all week, but I was fortunate that I was here in Atlanta and we were able to have a procedure done where they ran a tube down my throat and shocked my heart back into rhythm. But had you not detected that incidence on me earlier, two years ago, it's no telling what it would have ended up with, maybe even a heart attack of that state. But what you all are doing here and what I have heard has really been something I think that our whole community needs to hear. We need to become a part of. Because if we can detect the diseases and detect the symptoms of our people who live in our community, we can greatly enhance our healthcare disparities in our community. I want to thank all of you all for what you do, particularly the presenters and Dr. Simmons, certainly those things that you and Mount Zion is doing to advance not just our spiritual well-being, but our health has to be applauded. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Let me close with these comments. You heard Ursula mention that there's going to be a part 2, and that's coming into May, and we will get you the date and time later. But there's another part that starts today. This information means absolutely nothing unless those of you who have been listening take it and do something because of it. And here are some takeaways, some action steps that we want you to do. We want you to begin to talk to your doctor about your own health as well as those around you. And Jamie said something a moment ago that I think is very critical, and that is sometimes physicians don't see you. And so if you have a physician that don't see you, but just see you statistically, get you another physician. So talk to your physician about prevention and screening. And remember, everybody does not fit the screening model. There are exceptions, and you may be there. Share this information with your family and friends, and you can do it verbally, or you can share the Facebook link with them. And also, please look in the chat room to make sure that you look at the resources that are there. And then also, we need you to complete a post-workshop survey. And so please, all of you, make sure you complete that survey. And I close with this. At Mount Zion, we're again thankful for the collaborative with the HEAL organization and this partnership that brought all of us together today. We're going to continue this partnership so that, again, we can bless our community. And thank all of our presenters again and all of those who watched. This wouldn't have been a success without you, so thank you very much. We're going to close with prayer. Father, we thank you now as we come to a close of this program. And we thank you for the understanding that as our God, You're not just concerned about us making it to heaven and living the abundant life, but right here on earth, as a part of our walk, you want us to live the abundant life. And we can't have that life if we are not healthy, if we are not well. And so thank you for this ministry that assists us to be able to create people in this community who are well, who are healthy, and who are managing disease if they so happen to get it. And again, as we dismiss from this place, bless all of us to take action after this is over. In Jesus' name, amen. And we will see you next month, same place, same time. Be blessed.